Well, polo is actually one of the oldest sports known to exist, one of the oldest organized sports, and it's traced back to about 4,000 years. Apparently it was originally played on elephants. It's believed that the original ball was a goat's head or another animal's head, and that they batted it around. And
lovely.
That's yes. Now it's a little bit more civilized these days. We use a plastic ball. We have 4 horses on each team, and there are referees and everything, so it's a lot more civilized. But it's an amazing sport. You have the beauty and the speed of these wonderful athletes, the horses themselves. Some of them are retrained thoroughbreds from that have been in racing or other equestrian sports. Some of them are bred specifically for polo. There are 4 players on each team, human players that is, and 4 horses. And basically it's an easy sport to watch because when the ball goes through the goal, it's a score. So that's really all you need to know.
How did the sport of polo evolve from elephants and goat heads to where it is today? There had to be a slow transition over that 4,000 year
exactly.
period.
I'm sure it's quite an evolution, but
I'm sure the goats feel better about it.
Yes, definitely. But they call it the sport of kings because typically, it had been a very majestic sport, and it's played by royalty. This year, for example, Prince William played at the Santa Barbara Polo Club, and our good friends out of Santa Barbara had an amazing event out there. So it is still played by royalty, but it's also played by a very diverse range of people as well. In fact, in Saratoga this summer, we had one of the largest women's tournaments in the United States, and women are really quickly becoming the dominant force in the sport. So the sport has continued to evolve over the years. But it is a sport that requires some means to play it. But certainly, from a spectator standpoint, it's open to everyone, and that's what's so great at Saratoga Polo, that we have families with kids, we allow dogs on leashes.
Right.
It's just a great night out. So even though people perceive it as being an elitist sport and possibly something that's not accessible, we've gone to great lengths to invite people and have people come and check it out and experience something that they might not have experienced before, because it's such a great sport to watch. It's at 5:30 in the afternoon on Fridays and Sundays through Labor Day. And people come out with their families. The kids get to run around. You get to see the horses. It's an amazing sport to watch, and a lot of people get hooked on it and want to come back. So we're happy to have a very loyal group of spectators.
Now, other than Saratoga Springs, where else is polo played in New York State?
In New York State, Cornell has a very big program at the university. So we actually do draw from that. We have people who are involved at Saratoga Polo, veterinarians, some of the professional players, some of the college interns come out of the Cornell program. So there is quite a bit in that central New York area.
Do they have a course in polo at Cornell University?
I don't believe they have a course, but I know they have a team.
Okay.
And a lot of the veterinary folks out of the veterinary college there are involved in polo and certainly in other equestrian sports.
Where else in New York State?
There are about 20 different clubs in New York at
Wow.
the last count. It might even be more. Saratoga Polo is one of the 4 oldest polo clubs in the United States. One of the other 4 is the club in Long Island.
Okay.
It's changed names over the years. I believe it's called Meadowbrook now, but it was originally in Old Westbury. So polo has been quite popular there for some time. There are a couple of other clubs that are down in the Dutchess County area.
Okay.
There's one in Mashomek, which is the Millbrook Millbrook area.
Sure.
So there are a number of clubs around the state as well as around the country.
I did not realize that polo was that big in New York State. There were so many places that have polo.
Yes. Well, it's the type of sport where you'll be surprised if you look for it. You'll be surprised how many people are involved in it. But typically, some of the most prominent polo matches in history have been played in New York State, either at Saratoga Polo or at the club in Long Island. And a lot of the society folks at the turn of the last century played significant matches at Saratoga Polo. So when you go to the Polo Hall of Fame down in Lake Worth, Florida, you can see that the early history of the sport in the United States, a lot of it was based in New York State.
Like thoroughbred racing, polo is a four-season sport, and you alluded
Yes.
to Florida. And where else is it played in the warmer climates during the winter?
Prominently in the Palm Beach area in Wellington. That's where the International Polo Club of
Right.
Palm Beach is, and that is where the U.S. Open is, for example. That's where the highest level of polo is played in the United States during the season. Aiken, South Carolina is another area where I think at last count there were 60 or 70 polo fields. Now, a polo field is 9.5 times the size of a football field, so
Right.
you can imagine how much property we're talking about in Aiken, South Carolina. But Aiken is also an area where thoroughbreds are trained for the race course. There is also a racing museum there, even though the Hall of Fame is in Saratoga. And you have quite a lot of activity for polo going on. A lot of the breeding of the polo ponies and a lot of the training, and really a lot of the polo play in the spring and fall takes place in Aiken, South Carolina. But polo is really all over the country. There are over 600 polo clubs in the United States.
We were talking about history, and you have a very historic field that you play on, the Whitney Field in Saratoga, which evidently was closed during World War II.
Yes.
And because of you, it reopened, and it is active again. You want to talk about the history of the field and how
Certainly.
you got it reopened?
Well, it was founded by W.C. Whitney in 1898.
And the Whitney family
Yes.
is
Still very active.
I mean, share their history a little bit with our viewers who may not know
Absolutely.
who they are.
Well, some of the biggest polo matches in this country were matches played by C.V. Whitney,
Right.
who is the nephew, I believe, of W.C. Whitney, who founded the
New York Central Railroad?
field. Yes.
Right.
So a lot of those matches had taken place, pre-war. The field had been dormant for a number of years, and it was actually a classmate of mine at Skidmore College, Leighton Jordan, who rediscovered the field. Got Peter Brandt and Will Farish, who were both heavily involved in polo and in the horse racing community in about 1980 to revive the field. So we can't take credit for that, but what we've done is Mike Bucci and I bought the property in 2004. We've expanded the program. We've really changed it from being a private membership club to being open to the public, and we've had some great crowds, especially this summer. It's just such a great night out, and people really enjoy it, and we're happy to have world-class polo in Saratoga. It's part of the foundation of the city. It's one of the major attractions in Saratoga Springs, and we don't have a lot of trouble recruiting players. Some clubs struggle with that because it's a significant expense to play in one club versus another, because it's not just the 4 horses you see on the field at any one time. A polo team might have 30 to 40 head of horses per team. And if you have 6 teams in town for a tournament, you're talking about a substantial number of stables, grooms, trainers, trainers, etc. So it's the economic impact is pretty substantial for the region.
Well, you kind of got to my next question. You must have read my mind, because I was going to talk about the fact that polo, not only in Saratoga Springs but throughout New York State and the rest of the nation, has a big impact on tourism, which is so important to our economy.
Correct. And there are a lot of people involved in the sport who make a living off of it. So you have professional players, you have the grooms and all the stable operations and so forth, and then you have folks that help to put on the show and accommodate spectators and so forth. So it is a substantial sport, and it's amazing. I know there are some folks out in Rochester, for example, that are introducing young people to the sport.
Wow.
And they've been training hundreds of kids to get involved in polo. And it's a great way to get into a good school, because it's one of those sports where, it's a lot of the more significant colleges in the United States have polo programs, and, it's a rare thing for a young person to know how to play before they enter college, because many people get into the sport, their first exposure is in the college itself. So we're very active in training young people to play polo. I know that the Rochester area, there's a substantial training center, also in central New York, related to the Cornell program. In fact, the gentleman who runs the Polo Training Foundation, which is responsible for training new players how to play polo, is based in out of Cornell. So
now, when we started the show, we said the stars of Saratoga are obviously the horses.
Yes.
And we haven't really talked about the horses that much yet. Tell us about the horses that get involved in the sport of polo.
Well, polo ponies come from a variety of different breeds. As I said before, some polo ponies actually are retrained thoroughbred horses who have raced on racetracks. Polo ponies tend to have careers that are, rather than in single digits, in double digits. So it is possible for a horse to be retrained from racing to be a polo pony. And that's where, like I said, I'm not really a horse person. I just play one on TV, so I don't know a whole lot about horses, but I know how to enjoy watching them. So.
Now, you've shared with me in the past that horses live rather a long life.
Yes.
How old do they live to be?
Well, I know that a number of polo ponies can play polo into their late teens.
Right.
And typically, the lifespan is into their 20s.
Right.
And so polo ponies tend to, have much longer careers than in many of other equestrian sports. And then I'm actually involved in the Polo Pony Retirement Foundation, where we place horses. Typically, the horses can serve as training horses, pony rides, that type of thing.
Well, I know you've been very active in making sure that horses have a quality of life until they pass away, and I know that you work with equine advocates. Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's important for any of us that are involved in equestrian sports, because all these horses, while they're actively playing the sports, are very well cared for, because it's a substantial investment, and the relationship between the players and the horses is a very close connection.
Very personal.
Yes, very personal, as it is in horse racing as well. And a number of us, the people involved in horse racing, thoroughbred racing, harness racing, polo, and other equestrian sports, had to be very conscientious about the full lifespan of the athletes, because they are athletes. And making their lives, just like with people, you want to make, provide a quality of life throughout their lifespan, and not just while they're actively engaged in the sports.